Twits back again. We finished up yesterday with Mr. and Mrs. Twit on their heads, with glue on their heads, because they thought their holiday was standing on the ceiling, and they came up with a genius plan to turn themselves upside down. The next section is called The Monkeys Escape. That evening, Muggle-Wump and his family went up to the big wood on top of the hill. And in the tallest tree of all, they built a marvellous tree house. All the birds, especially the big ones, the crows and rooks and magpies, made their nests around the tree house so that nobody could see it from the ground. "You can stay up there forever, you know," the roly-poly bird said. "Why not?" asked Muggle-Wump. "It's a lovely place." "Just you wait till the winter comes," the roly-poly bird said. "Monkeys don't like cold weather, do they?" "They most certainly don't," cried Muggle-Wump. "Are the winters so very cold over here?" "It's all snow and ice," said the roly-poly bird. "Sometimes it's so cold a bird will wake up in the morning with his feet frozen to the bough that he's been roasting on." "Then what shall we do?" cried Muggle-Wump. "My family will all be deep freezed." "No, they won't," said the roly-poly bird, "because the first leaves start falling from the trees in the autumn. You can all fly home to Africa with me." "Don't be ridiculous," Muggle-Wump said. "Monkeys can't fly." "You can sit on my back," said the roly-poly bird. "I shall take you one at a time. You will travel by my roly-poly superjet. It won't cost you a penny." Sounds tempting. The next section is called The Twits Get the Shrinks. And down here in the horrid house, Mr. and Mrs. Twit are still stuck upside down to the floor of the living room.
"It's all your fault,"
yelled Mr. Twit, thrashing his legs in the air.
"You're the one, you ugly old cow, who went hopping around and shouting, 'We're upside down, we're upside down.'"
"And you're the one who said to stand on your head so we'd be the right way up, you whiskery old warthog,"
screamed Mrs. Twit.
"Now we'll never get free. We're stuck here forever."
"You may be stuck here forever," said Mr. Twit, "but not me. I'm going to get away."
Mr. Twit wriggled and squirmed, and he squiggled and wormed, and he twisted and turned, and he choggled and churned, but the sticky glue held him to the floor just as tightly as he had once held the poor birds to the big dead tree. He was still upside down as ever, standing on his head. But our heads are not meant to be stood up on. If you stand on your head for a very long time, a horrid thing happens. And this was where Mr. Twit got his biggest shock of all. With so much weight on it from up above, his head began to get squashed into his body. Quite soon, it had disappeared completely, sunk out of sight in the fatty folds of his flabby neck.
"I'm shrinking,"
burbled Mr. Twit.
"Oh, no,"
cried Mrs. Twit.
"Oh, me. Save me, poor doctor,"
yelled Mr. Twit.
"I'm getting the dreaded shrinks."
And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too. And this time, it wasn't a fake. It was the real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks. Then their necks began shrinking into their bodies. And their bodies began shrinking into their legs. And their legs began shrinking into their feet. 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred came round to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped into the house, and there he saw, on the floor of the living room, 2 bundles of old clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, and a walking stick. There was nothing more left in this world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit. And everyone, including Fred, shouted, "Hooray!" And there we have what is left of Mr. and Mrs. Twit. Hooray! Well, that is the end, not only of Mr. and Mrs. Twit, but of their story too. So make sure you tune in to find out which book we're going to be reading next.